Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey Mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody, and welcome to the 100th episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. I'm your host, Mike. With me today is my original host, Andy. Can you believe 100 episodes of this show?
I must say, I cannot believe that you have been allowed to do 100 of these episodes.
I can't believe I have either. I have to tell you.
I will say that your dad 100% nailed it with the intro. It was true then. It's still true now. But somehow you made it, man. So congrats.
I guess I've been swimming out of the shallow end of the gene pool for 100 episodes now and working my way here. I tell you, man, it's been a fun journey. I've had so many great guests, so many collectors and just so many knowledgeable people on the show, yourself excluded. But it's just been so much fun. That's the only thing I can say when people say, how's the podcast going? I'm like, I'm having a blast with it.
Yeah, and that's what matters, right?
It's totally what matters. There's a guy I want to bring on. I'm going to bring on a lot of guests tonight, guys. I apologize if my lighting's terrible. I don't care. This is a podcast. So if you're watching on YouTube, it doesn't really matter. No one wants to see my face anyway. But so many great people that have been a part of the show. We have a few of them. They're going to join us tonight as we talk through just stories and fun and all that. But there's one guy, Andy, that we have to blame for this podcast.
Well, I would like to have a word with him.
Well, here he is. You can ask him whatever you want now.
So, Ty, first off, hello, Ty. Secondly, how in the world have you let Mike do 100 of these episodes?
Well, we do things like hide his face like we're doing tonight.
Well, that helps.
It's the only way it works. Which, by the way, why is there no lighting in your house? You would think after 100 episodes, you would know you have to have lights for a YouTube video.
Not in the normal spot, and I'm really winging this. But Ty, tell everybody how the conversations that we had early on in the Bench Clear Media, life of Bench Clear Media and how this came about. Do you remember?
Yeah. I vaguely remember the first time you brought it up. Like, hey, Ty, what do you think about me doing a vintage podcast? So, well, why would you not do it? And I don't even think you had a good answer. It was kind of like, well, I don't know. I guess I should. I don't know what to do. What do I do? Where do I go? And it was just, I think it was a simple conversation of, hey, let me lay the groundwork of how you actually do a simple podcast, throw it on all these different platforms and go. And I don't think you really stopped since. It's just been week after week after week for 2 years. So.
Yeah, that was totally the truth. I had no idea. And if I'd have known how simple it was, I would have not been so intimidated by it. But I really was. And you helped me get over that and just go, dude, just do this and off you can go. Yeah. And I really appreciate that because this has been a great outlet for me and hopefully for my friends to come on and chat about vintage, which is, I don't know that there's another there might be one or two now vintage podcasts out there, but it was at the time, relatively groundbreaking. I don't know how important it is, but there are a lot of people that have enjoyed this podcast. So I'm grateful to you, Ty, for helping make that happen.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny because baseball collectors, obviously it's your natural at that. But I think your natural habitat, true natural habitat is the vintage podcast. It's just so easy for you to talk hours about vintage and interview people. It just was a perfect fit. And yeah, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. It should have happened sooner.
Yeah, well, here we are, and we're on our way to, many, many more. There's no chance of this stopping anytime soon, as far as I'm concerned. You want to hang on a second time? I want to bring some more folks in. Or are you going to take off?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
All right, I want to bring on a guy who has been on several episodes. He's one of my really good friends and Andy's really good friends, and he's a great guy in the hobby. JT Triple Crown 24. How are you, man?
I'm living the dream, Mike. How are you?
You sound kind of under the weather. Or is that
I'm
puberty?
not on the weather.
That's puberty. I get it. Okay.
Yeah. When you get to be, my ripe old age, you move a little bit slower, talk a little bit slower, just slow down a bit.
Gotcha. Hey, Andy, we have two guys on right now that are full-time card dudes.
That's crazy. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's pretty cool. That's not often that happens especially on this podcast, right?
Right. And JT's contributed several episodes talking about being, God, what all have we talked about, JT? Several different things. Being going full time, and then you interviewed with Ty talking about that too on Bench Clear as well.
We've talked about trading. By the way, anybody got any trades as we start off today's show? I'm looking for some trades. Yeah, in addition to that, I feel like we just kind of go with the flow. That's the really fun thing about this podcast is that, we could just sit down and talk about vintage baseball cards, record it, and put it up there. It'd probably just be hopefully as entertaining as what we do when we try to structure it out. But we've covered pretty much the whole spectrum, but there's always still more to talk about or topics to revisit. So it's been a lot of fun.
One of my favorite episodes that we did was It's a Marathon, Not a Sprint, where we kind of talked about what it is to be a collector, that it takes a long time to build a collection. And I know Andy's had a lot of time to build a collection too, and Ty, and so many guys on here with so much experience. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. You see collections like Andy's, and you just don't get those 24 cards in the span of a few days like that. It doesn't happen.
Lots of time, my friend.
But no, yeah, I really enjoyed that episode too. I feel like for every 10 episodes that we're like, oh, we should do an episode about this, maybe one that we actually sit down and then record. But that was one of the ones that came to fruition, I think earlier this year or late last year. And I had a lot of fun with that. I think it's important too. I always hope that when we sit down to do this, we'll take our shots at each other. I think we've already got our quota in for our jokes at each other's expense for this episode probably already. But hopefully people take away something other than just the entertainment factor or whatever else they may tune in for.
Anything you want to ask JT, Andy?
Well, hit me up after the show for some trades, JT. And I'm sure you can probably say the same to this, but how many conversations have we had with Mike where at the end of the conversation, you're like, man, we should have recorded that. That could have been a podcast.
Quite a bit. We mostly shoot from the hip when we're doing these episodes where we're just kind of talking about whatever comes up as the conversation flows along. But yeah, there's just so many things that we come up with. And I know there's times where Mike and I will say something and all of a sudden it's we should do a podcast on that. And then maybe it turns into that. I know that even when I've sat down to record my own show a few times, I go on YouTube. First thing I see is a new Golden Age and it's the same topic. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Maybe that's just great minds thinking alike or two brains trying to put together one thought. But whichever way it may be, there's a lot of great vintage topics out there to explore that we've definitely talked about privately too.
Well, Ty's going to kill me when I say this, but JT, you know this, and all the guys know this. I don't do notes. I may have one or two bullet points of what I want to do an entire hour on. And what happens is during an episode, as we're talking about, the topic du jour, I will start making notes and questions I want to ask and things I want to dive deeper on. And I don't do that. And Ty's like, when Ty and I do stuff, we would do on the fly, he would be we would literally sit down and go, all right, what do we want to talk about today? 10 minutes later, we hit record and we're recording an episode. So I don't know if I've turned Ty more into the just do it off the cuff, but Ty's a prepper. He likes, all his stuff is so well manicured and so nicely done. So it's just different. And that's how we've always done it. And it's worked out pretty well so far. Who do we want to bring on next? Let's bring in a guy who was on a very early episode that we talked about Dodgers cards. Do you remember that, Josh? Rated rookie.
Right.
Here with us.
The early days. Yeah, that was a great one. I've just been thinking about some of the great times we've had staying at your house in Texas, and I swear to everyone it has lights. And you also introduced me to peanut butter whiskey, which I think Andy was there for too. I'd never even seen that before in LA.
Yeah,
It's legit, isn't it, Andy?
It's good. Very good. Be careful.
Shockingly good.
Be careful.
Yeah, you could drink yourself into a stupor on that one. And Josh, we've been to many shows together, or all of us here. I've been to card shows with every one of you guys on the screen now. And card shows are just one of those things that I wish could be better formatted for a podcast, but it just doesn't work. It's just sounds right. So it just experiences, right, with your friends and going and doing things, and everybody does something different. I mean, Josh, your collection is absolutely off the hook, amazing. And you collect differently than I do in some aspects and very similar to me in others, but that's what's cool is you make those connections, right?
Yeah, likewise, man. And it's cool when I look back on a few cards, definitely like that Leaf Babe Ruth. I'll have that memory of us picking those up together. And it's cool to have these kind of memories that tie, our groups back together.
I got to tell that story, the Ruth story, the 49 Leaf Ruth. Josh was looking at one at a Dallas card show. I think Andy and maybe even JT were there that weekend. And we were looking at this card and we're like, Josh, dude, you need to get that, and encouraging him. And he ended up buying it. And then we found another one down the road, or in the show later on. And I was thinking about it. I thought about it overnight. We went to dinner that night or something. And Josh was like, dude, if you don't buy that card, I'm going to. And so I ended up buying a 49 Leaf Ruth as well. So we had a matching pair, right?
I knew that would kind of push you over the edge because you were kind of wanted to. And then, you had a little bit of FOMO where you're like, okay, if I say that, Mike's going to lock it up. And you got a great deal on that too. So it was awesome.
Yeah. Well, and yours is prettier, but weren't they both ones, like
That's
PSA
right.
ones? Yeah. But hey, when you're talking a 49 Leaf Ruth, who's going to argue? All right, let's bring on, because then we'll just have this whole motley crew here. Craig, you have been on. Craig Halbig is joining us, professional dealer, amazing collector. So Craig and I talk more before and after an episode probably than anyone. Like we'll sit, if a podcast is going to be 45 minutes to an hour, Craig and I are talking 2 hours total, 2 to 3 hours. And he's showing me stuff because it's just so much fun to talk to another collector, right, Craig?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's fun. Happy 100th episode here. Appreciate being on the show. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, collecting, telling stories, like the past podcasts that we've talked about. And then you and I get into our own swapping back and forth the stories and the cards. And it's just, it just fuels the passion for collecting, and for me, collecting, buying collections, doing shows, it all just kind of mixes in. So you just can't get enough. So it's a blast.
For those that don't know out there, the podcast has, closing in on 500,000 views and listens total over its 100 episodes. And Craig's is the most listened to and watched episode that we've ever done, was the first one that we did. I think it was during the pandemic when everything was, crazy hot and everybody wanted to hear about vintage and all that kind of stuff. So do you have a story you want to tell, Craig, real quick? Or?
Well, I enjoy talking about collections that I've been fortunate enough to buy. And I always keep a little bit of memorabilia sometimes about some of the people that I bought the collections from. And I actually got a couple things here. This is Nallen Shelton. I don't know if you can see that picture of Nallen or not. They did an article back in 1979 on Nowlin. This was back in St. Louis, Missouri. They had a little collectors club. It was actually pretty good size, called St. Louis Cards. And Nowlin started collecting back in the late 1940s. Well, long story short, my banker, who has loaned me a lot of money over the years, buying farms and doing different things, always told me about his Uncle Nowlin. I always thought, well, this guy's, probably got 1988 Donruss and, all that stuff that usually we find when we're looking for a collection. And, I didn't really get too serious about it until he kept telling me about it. And years later, he'd passed away and his family had this collection and he wanted me to go to the warehouse to look at it. And I'm like, the warehouse? And this is probably 45 minutes away from where I live. And long story short, I went over there with my friend, and this giant warehouse was full of vintage sports cards, game used jerseys, every complete set. He had the Goudeys, the Leaf, he had hockey, football, basketball, baseball, had one of the bigger collections anywhere in the Midwest. And a lot of his stuff was just untouched. I mean, it was immaculate. And it was just, it was a great collection. It took me months and months, spent a lot of time with the family, going through the cards, pulling out some of the key stuff, getting it graded. And for me, it was just exciting. I mean, to be able to look at a collection like that. And I'd go into this, I mean, it's beyond, I have pictures, I mean, of everything in the beginning. It was just so overwhelming. But there's collectors like that out there back in those days that they collected everything. I mean, he had all the pennants, he had pennants, he had autographed everything on. He had every Cooperstown induction bat from when Cooperstown started. He had all the autographs you could fathom. Who knows how many times he had Satchel Paige, Mantle, DiMaggio, then all his complete sets. And then he'd have they had thousands and thousands of extras of every year from the 50s all the way up. It was amazing. But he was one of those guys that set up at the National, whenever the National was back in St. Louis, when they first kind of started the National. Mimi Alonji was another guy. He was a scout for the Cardinals. He was also president of that St. Louis Cards. And I kind of got to know his family and got an opportunity to buy some cards. And long story short, I ended up buying quite a few cards from Nowlin's collection. But those collections are out there. You just got to get a lucky break. And I know for a lot of people, and like for me, when I'm on social media looking, you always see somebody show. I'll show you. I bought a collection, just another quick one. This cigar box, and I save everything. This cigar box was full of 1933 Goudey, 1934 Goudey, 33 DeLong set. It had all the wrappers, Diamond Star wrappers. And then also inside that was this little powder box, and it was completely full of 1932 Orbit pins. So I ended up getting the unnumbered pins all graded. I had the number 1 PSA registry. And I'm not bragging on this, but I've been fortunate. I think it's fun to share because I don't get an opportunity to share that stuff. But it's really cool to find. And this collection was, it was in a family, and an auctioneer had it at an auction house, and he was going to sell it. And I was fortunate enough. He was probably an hour and a half away. I went over and looked at it, and I ended up buying it. And the whole DeLong set was great. And each one of these collections, of course, as a collector, it's so hard, to decide and I think we all have that. What am I going to keep? When you spend a lot of money, sometimes you can't keep it all. But just there's so much excitement in the hobby when you can get a chance to go look at a collection or buy a collection. I think that's kind of that same thing, when you go to card shows, who's the dealer that's going to be there today? Or maybe somebody that doesn't do that many shows. Maybe they've got their uncle's collection from the 1950s and they've decided to set up at a show. So you never know. But for me, that's kind of I wanted to share that because it's to me, it's exciting. There's always that, we always like to go on that hunt for a collection or, those old cards that we're looking for. So, but a lot of, and, Nowlin, he had a lot of his sets in these original Topps books. So he'd take them out of packs and he'd put them right into these. So the cards were virtually untouched, except a lot of them had some of them had the little place on the corners where they had them in those books, So, but anyway, the stories are always fun to share. So, just a little something I thought I'd share with you guys and with everybody out there listening. So,
you're making all of us drool because we would all Josh probably would have just walked over him. He'd be like, "Nah, I don't need any of that stuff."
Yeah, it was just unbelievable. I mean, the complete sets. I mean, he had like even the basketball, like his 57 Topps basketball sets, 61 Fleer basketball. I mean, they were just untouched, you know. Of course, got them all graded, and the grades just were immaculate. And at the time, you know, pre-war was the way to go. And I called Bryn, and he, you know, they auctioned a lot of them off on eBay, a lot of that really, really high dollar stuff. But it was just to be able to see that stuff, and the Heartland statues and just anything and everything you could fathom. Had just boxes and boxes of just baseballs from the 50s and 60s still in the boxes. And but collectors back then, they collected everything. It didn't matter what it was. If it had anything to do with the sport, they hoarded it. And whenever this guy passed away, when they went to his house to try to get everything out, it was just like tunnels in his house of just all the cards and all the stuff. And so, you know, hopefully I won't ever get that bad, but I know a lot of times we keep buying and keep bringing it home and hoarding it, I guess you could say. But it's just a lot of fun. So
I've lived that when we went to Oklahoma City Tulsa, and we bought a collection for Chasing Cardboard that was literally an entire house of cards. And you're just like, wow, where do you even start? But Craig, thank you for that. That's awesome. I'm going to bring in two guys now that kind of go together, George and Don, because, man, we did a series of episodes, the three of us. I don't think any of us thought that people would actually care what our favorite sets from the 50s, 60s, and 70s were. But man, such popular episodes. I still get people commenting on those episodes and just how great they were. So Don and George, welcome. How are y'all doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. George is muted. He doesn't want to talk to us. So
come on, George.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Now that I'm unmuted, I can just start yammering on. Good to see all you guys.
Wait, just go ahead and mute yourself back, George. We don't need to hear anything. No, I'm just kidding. How did we come up with that idea, Don and George? I don't remember if we just started talking about it or the idea of going through each of those decades.
Well, from what I remember, I think you kind of told us what you wanted to do and invited us on, and we kind of you gave us what was great was you just kind of gave us a general idea from what I remember, and kind of just let us run with it. And, you know, that kind of creates more creative kind of conversation about the cards. And the same thing that you said, I've had so many people comment to me about it, and just like they really enjoyed it. And I mean, we're going to have other guys on the show here. You are who've commented about it too, Chris from Missouri. And, you know, just it was such a cool thing to do, and eventually moving it through the 80s even.
Don, what are your
You're right, George. I think George is spot on. It was your idea, Mike. But the great thing about those episodes, we didn't tell each other what we were going to show, what was our least favorite and favorite sets. So it was all new to us as well. And I think we surprised a few of the guys on. I remember I said I didn't like the 55 set. You two almost had a heart attack.
I said I couldn't disagree with you more.
Right. But I think what we all agreed on is we loved them all. We were forced to pick one that we liked the least, pretty much. And I think Dylan and a bunch of guys just did an episode kind of, I'm going to say it, copying us. But I think we encouraged that because we said, hey, it'd be cool to see other people's favorites. But that was, I've been on with Mike a few other times and with George, but that was definitely the best. And I was having withdrawal because I pulled out of the 80s because I just, that's not my wheelhouse. I didn't have enough knowledge. And I was jealous being left out, having withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, it's so much fun just to share stories and especially what you like. Like Craig was telling us about what he did. Josh has things he likes. JT, Andy, all of us have these, little pockets of collecting that we love that we get to share. And ironically, when we were going through each of the decades, we had a lot of similarities and we had a lot of differences. And I think that's good. That's okay. And you said it perfectly, John. It's not like I hate any of the sets in the 50s. I'm not going, I don't want to own that. You kind of like, let's pick a favorite or a couple favorites, couple least favorites, and just really ran with it. It was so much fun.
And I just wanted to say, to kind of piggyback along with what Craig was saying about buying collections, and the more that you kind of go through and purchase collections and handle these old cards, and I bought different collections at different points too, and not the extent Craig did, but you're going through and you're handling like the 65 set, and you look at that back and see that blue back, and it's a really well-made set, and the more you are exposed to all these different cards, especially in a raw format, and handle them, whether they're 33 Gaudis or they're 55 Bowmans or 65 Tops, you really kind of get an appreciation even more for them. And even looking at the commons, just started going through the 56 Top set that Don likes so much, and just looking at the commons it doesn't have to be a Hall of Famer. They're all beautiful cards.
Totally agree. I'm going to make this we're just going to start making this look like Hollywood Squares, Golden Age episode edition. We got Chris from Missouri, John Keating from That 70s Card Show. And we all have in common, except for Craig, who's right in the middle. He's the Alice of our Brady Bunch here. And if y'all don't know what that is, then you need to go watch Nickelodeon or something. But all of us create content in our own spaces, right? And we all collaborate together. We all do things together. John has That 70s Card Show. Chris just started a YouTube channel, which I think is great. Probably, Chris, you would agree, from encouragement from many guys on this screen, right?
Oh, no kidding. No kidding. I wouldn't, I say this all the time. I would not have done one had I not talked to you first. And then just right after I did one or two, the big ugly guy, and I'm talking about Don there, Donnie Livestream. He reached out.
I think meant George.
But Don reached out to me first, just after one or two videos, and it just amazing. And then you get, I watched George do some of his stuff, and I'm like, he and I think alike. I mean, it's just. He knew Rusty Staub. Nobody in my town knows who Rusty Staub is, and then I just started watching John and just the radio voice that he has, and I now binge watch channels like that, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without encouragement from everybody here, and especially you pushing me off and getting me started.
Well, I'm glad to do it because I think the hobby's better for it with you making content, and our hobby is better for it because we all make these connections. I remember when I met John, was it online or through Hobby Hotline? I think, John, we first met.
It was on Tinder.
Yeah.
The first time, right? Sorry, Julie. I apologize.
She's all right. She knows that's not true. But when John and I met, it was this instant, at least he probably didn't feel it, but I felt an instant connection with him because of the way he collects, the way he thinks. I love your snarkiness, I guess, similar to Dave, and your humor is awesome. And I get it. I get a lot of the dad joke references and everything. And so it's just, I look around this room right here of all these guys, and I have these memories with each of you that are so special to me, and I just want y'all to know that y'all have all been a part of this journey for me, and it's just awesome. Who wants to tell a story? I don't know. This is story time, so anybody can jump in now.
Mike, real quick, congratulations on 100 shows. You've been a big influence on all of us, obviously, but it's kind of like a safe place for in this hobby. This hobby is like the stock market, and I just need a safe place to go where I can talk and listen and not worry about any of the nonsense that's going on constantly. So I appreciate that. And most of us, or all of us that have been on your show, it's just a matter of just talking back and forth. There's no pressure. So that's all we like to do is talk about cards. With that said, you did pressure me into doing something once. And 1982, I stood in line for Richie Ashburn autograph on a 62 Tops. That's the last time I stood in an autograph line until 2022 for Whitey Herzog. So I wouldn't do that for anybody. I had a 40-year span where I didn't wait on anybody, and I did it for you. So I appreciate you, and obviously you gave me my first 51 Topps Redback as a little reward for staying in line. So there you go. That's a quick autograph story. I still don't have the bug. I won't have the bug. This is the last time I'll wait in line for an autograph.
Until I need another one.
Until you need another one. Yes, sir. And does anybody else think JT sounds like we used to sound when we'd call into the school to say we couldn't come into school and we were acting like we were our parents' voices? Does JT sound like that to anybody else? JT, say something for me. Say John won't be in. Yeah, you're definitely.
I just had my first voice crack since
there
the
you
last
go,
time.
Man. That's me calling in to the office when I was 12 years old saying John won't be in school today. Just had a flashback, man.
Congrats.
And why is Andy always facing away from the TV? That's a question, a burning question I have for.
Well, I like to have a game on in the background in case Mike gets a little too boring and I can just start.
My dog's like that too, Andy. You got to turn the TV on.
I like it too because I don't have to listen to Andy. I can just watch the game.
You watch the game. Well, Don, you're too cheap to pay for a subscription. That's why you like it.
When I chat with Andy all the time, like, all right, what game's on? I'm always asking him, and he'll be watching NBA or, football or something's always on, and it's hilarious. At least he's not distracted by it, right? Like he's not looking directly at it. Because if he was, John, he would, be like, what'd you say? Huh?
Do you think he's not looking into a mirror right now?
I can see it.
Right exactly. The guy's not stupid, man.
It's Oklahoma City Thunder. They're introducing the players right now. I can see
what's going on. He's smarter than you, Mike. He's watching in reverse.
Yeah.
Everybody's left-handed in Andy's world because he's watching through a mirror.
So I want to bring up a topic that I know we all love, and that's the National. Is everybody here going to be at the National? Raise your hand. Not that podcast people can see it, but George, you better raise your hand, George.
I'm a hard maybe. On yeah. I got to see what's going on. I would love to go. I went to my first one last year. It was great because when I walked in one day and there's Chris and he walks up to me and he's like, I got to shake your hand. I said, what? He's like, I love your channel. Your channel's great. I want to buy you a drink. Are you going to the YouTuber's place? YouTuber's mixer? I said, well, if you're buying me a drink, I am. No, I was already going. But that was like
pickup line.
So it's maybe, but it's so much fun. So all the guys watching it, like you always say, Mike, you have to go to the National. It's not the cards, but it's the friendships. It's all the guys you meet, just like all these guys right here.
Yeah, it's totally that way for me. I love the cards, right? The cards are awesome, but man, hanging out with you guys is so much better.
Thursday night's the best time of the whole show. Is Thursday night. Because if you do get to pick up the card, you get to show it to one of your friends on Thursday.
Do you guys have a card in mind already? A targeted card for the National? Anybody? That's a no, huh?
Good question, John.
Yes, a 53 P. Reese in action card. Bowman
color, huh?
Yeah. I had it last year for about 10 minutes.
I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I'm getting some feedback, but that's actually, I can't tell if it's still going or not, if it's me or what.
Well, mute everybody one at a time, Mike. Pretend you're back at the AV club in high school.
Yeah, I'll mute. See till we figure it out. What about if everybody mutes until they talk? Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Wow, that is. I think it's just too many audio signals all trying to jam into StreamYard here, and it gets a little bit confused. But I really want
It's all the artificial hips in here. It's causing interference.
artificial hips.
Yeah.
The titanium is
titanium is blocking the metaverse.
Except for JT. He doesn't even know
somebody to
what-
push us
Yeah.
around, man. We need somebody to wheel us around the national this year. It'll be JT.
JT's going to take turns. The card I'm targeting is going to be a 53 Topps Willie Mays is what I'm looking at.
I'm looking for one of those too, man. That's not fair.
I'm looking for a lot of stuff. I just can't pull the money out of my wallet for it.
Yeah. Good point.
Good stuff. George, I don't think George slept the whole week we were at the National. George was one of my roomies. He was up till
That's
5
interesting.
every night. He was a trooper.
It's a lot of fun with all those cards, man, and all the guys. I mean, it was just too much stimulation. I think I slept for like 3 days after I got back.
Would you guys get together without the national? Do you think that the national has to be a part of that? If you guys spend a week or a couple of days together in someplace, would you still have that buzz, do you think?
Well, if you remember when the National didn't happen in 2020, we did Hobby Palooza, which was a way to virtually hang out. I think that if there was no National, first of all, we all probably wouldn't know each other as well, honest. Like I met Josh at the National the first time I met Josh. And I met Andy at a National the first time I met Andy. So I met Chris the first time at a National. So the reality is, without the National providing this wonderful opportunity for us all to get together, how else would that magic be created? I don't know. It doesn't happen the same at regional shows or local shows. It's much more confined. I mean, we've got Oklahoma, Ohio, California, Tennessee, Arizona, Missouri, Philadelphia. I mean, how many states? 9 states represent. Nobody's in the same state.
Right.
Nah, John and I are.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Different coasts, but the same state.
Yeah.
So what's your you guys are going to the Burbank show coming up, right?
Me, Andy, and Josh are, yes.
Yeah. So I mean that's a newer show. Are there any other shows? Have you ever thought about the Strongsville show or anything like that?
Would love to do that show. Nashville, I want to do.
Okay.
The
Philly show's a good one too. I know them.
Philly?
We're there, but there's a lot of
Strongsville show is
vintage.
a great vintage show. I
Yeah.
was there last year. I plan on going again in March.
I always thought that would be a great one to get the vintage collectors in the hobby world together.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, just that's a destination place for me.
What if we called it Vintage Stock 2023 and we
Go to
Do
Set
it,
up-
man.
Craig, have you set up at the Strongsville show before? You're muted. Hold on, Craig, you're muted. I'll unmute you. Hang on. And then I'll mute myself.
Yeah, I had the chance to set up last year and it didn't work out. So I'm thinking that show is possibly the same. Is it in March?
Yeah.
It is.
I think it's the same weekend as the Nashville show that I'm doing.
I think it's like the 13th, 14th, 15th, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, I think it might be the same weekend. So I'll be at the Nashville show, which I did last year, which was a lot of fun. But I'd like to do that Strongsville show. Since I'm going to be in Nashville, I've already committed to that show. I'm not going to be able to do it, but that is I think as far as for a vintage card show, that is it. I mean, that's the one. So I'm looking forward to maybe doing that next year. I need to, if the dates work out right.
It felt like it was about 90% vintage walking around there. It's not a huge show by any means, but the quality is great.
Yeah, they're pretty particular, I think, on who's doing the show and everything. But I know it's been a really successful show. Everybody talks about it. So
If you got half the tables a bigger show has, but they're all vintage, it doesn't matter. You don't have to wade through all the mess, right?
Good point.
exactly.
How about Toronto? Anybody ever want to go up there? I think if you're into OPG, that's the way to go, right? I got to head up there. Mike, you're muted.
Go hang with Mike Canadian Cards.
I think going to Toronto would be great because they wouldn't. Obviously, vintage baseball isn't as popular, most likely, and so you could probably get some better deals.
Yeah.
Craig, I want to ask Craig if he's worried about if he goes to Strongville. I mean, you're a vintage dealer Mainly, do you worry about the fact that everybody else there pretty much is vintage and there's more competition versus when you go to, say, Dallas and you're one of the only pure vintage tables that's there? How does that play into your decision process?
I mean, I don't think so. Like you said, I haven't done the Strongsville show, so I'd say there'd probably be, as far as setting up, there'd be a lot of competition. But from what I understand, it's just packed with vintage buyers and collectors. So, and you got to be kind of selective. I know for me, I've got a lot of cards, but you start doing 2 or 3 shows before the National, it can really put a dent in your inventory before you get to the National. I've got 2 booths at the National this year. So, I'm just starting now. I'm trying to build up my inventory and pull stuff out and get ready. Today I had a 5,000 count box of 64 tops and I was sorting those. So I'm always trying to get everything in order and getting everything ready for these shows because I usually sell a lot of cards whenever I go. So it'll be, the Nationals, there's a lot of dealers there, but I've been doing it for several years. So a lot of times the collectors will come to my table and spend a lot of time. So
what time do you guys all want to meet at Craig's house to help him sort through 64 tops? Let's just
come on over.
And
my kids are in college, so they've given that up there.
I'm going to wear pants with like 12 pockets. I'm going to
I was
fill
going to
them
say 2
all up,
for
man.
Craig, 1 for me.
Hey, we're at the 50-yard line here. It's
Watch out.
6 months from the National, right?
Watch out, Craig. I have us sitting around in our Speedos like we're some kind of
it'll be like
sneak out with the diamonds or something.
Be like New Jack City, if you remember that, where they're all in their underwear.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
By the way,
anyway,
that'd be like shoving a quart of jelly in a pint jar for me.
Craig did offer, just so all you guys know, that since y'all are on this celebrating this 100th episode, he's going to give you guys 50% off at his table if you're on the live stream. So
I've got that 5,000 count box, $88. So I'll let you guys
I think we all have one of those, man.
Yeah. Well, that would be the 50% off box for you guys.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Hey, Josh, you haven't been to the Burbank show, have you?
No, I was traveling last time, but I might see George this weekend. There's a Long Beach show, which is mostly coins. What are your thoughts, George?
Yeah, we're gonna Long Beach Expo's 3 times a year, so my buddy and I are going out there. And I've texted Josh, and hopefully I'm going to see him. We're gonna have a couple tables, and it's mostly a coin show. There's some good vintage dealers there, though. There's some high end stuff. And then PSA is there if you want to drop off your cards so that they can give you the treatment on them. So I probably will see Josh this weekend. I wish I could stay out there to go to Burbank. But there's just nothing like going to a show. It's so cool. And John, you asked will we see each other if it wasn't for the National. I wouldn't have an opportunity probably to meet up with Don in Pittsburgh or it's hard when everything's so far, right? I envy you guys who live in the Northeast and you can go to shows like you have those when I hear it's just a vintage show or 90% vintage show, wow, that gets like the juices going,
Yeah. I've been to the Vegas show and it's brutal because you have to hunt for anything that's older than, from the last millennium, as they say. It's tough, man.
What is y'all's, besides the National, go around the room? I'll start with Andy. What's your favorite other show that you've been to, place and or time?
It would have to be the Dallas card show for me because, I think as of right now, it's probably the second largest show in the country. So I just happen, just like yourself, I happen to be close enough to where that's an easy drive and convenient to go to. So hopefully, I'm looking forward to this Burbank show, though. I've heard good things, so I'm excited.
And it'll be your first trip ever to California, so that'll be pretty cool.
True, and if it's anything like what everybody around here says, it'll be my last trip. But
you survived that house in Atlantic City.
That's true. That's true.
Oh.
He's gonna come home with Botox, though.
Right? I still remember James. We were out picking Jake up from the house that Mike, you guys were at, and Josh, you were there, right? JT,
And there was a mattress out front next door. Somebody had flopped down on, and James sat on the mattress, or didn't touch the mattress, but acted like he was sitting on it, and looking like he was had imbibed in too many beers. But that was a place, man. Atlantic City in general, boy.
Yeah, lived up to its reputation, didn't it?
Oh, I mean,
everybody was warned. Everybody was warned, right?
I drove Jake across the state, and I dropped him off at Mike's place first. I was like, "Oh man, I hope our place it's got to be better than this."
Yeah, JT was scared. Like, you know, he's pretty young. I said, "Don't worry, Josh will protect you. Don't worry, Josh has got you." But we were going to let JT be the first. He was right by the front door, so if anybody came in, JT was getting shot first, and you know, we would all hear the ruckus and be able to escape out the back. But
how many different types of vinyl tile did that place have in it? I just remember your video showing off the place, and I was just cracking me up. I'm like, oh man, we're in for it in Atlantic City.
We got what we paid for.
What'd you say? Mike's like, I got a place right near the convention center. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh man. Oh man. Because there's nothing nice near that place, man.
Well, the only good thing about it was a 6-minute walk to the convention center. That's about it. That's where
you were walking fast. Don't lie, right? You were.
We were. It was a long 6 minutes.
Longest 6 minutes of your life.
JT, what's your favorite show that you experienced that you've been to besides the National?
It's always a blast to go to the Dallas Card Show because it means I get to visit my favorite four-legged friend on YouTube, Norman, as well as John's. So, I mean, that's a good one. There's a show here locally that I'll pick just because I get to go to it more often. It's called Xenia, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it's a fairly large show. It's probably 150 to 170 tables if you have a good weekend. And what I like about it is when it has vintage there, it's not the stuff that is basically for display only because nobody's walking around with $35,000 to drop on a 52 mantle. Like, it's cards that you're looking for in reasonable grades at, for the most part, reasonable prices. So that's why I really like that show, because it seems like anytime I go to some of the big shows, because of the overhead that goes into it, I mean, as a dealer, I can tell you that you want to put your best stuff out. Craig knows exactly what I'm talking about too. If you're making a big trip, you know, you got to put your best foot forward. But some of these smaller shows, sometimes you can get the guys who maybe have some of the cheaper stuff who don't have to pay for hotels and planes and all that. So I like those kind of shows as well. But in terms of like overall experience, you got to at least try the Dallas show once, I would say.
Yeah, for y'all that don't know, JT is my secret shopper. So when he goes to all these shows and sets up, he has my login for my PSA inventory, and he can look at it and go, yep, Mike's missing this Johnny Bench or this Lou Brock or this whatever, and he'll work out a deal and he'll send me pictures and like basically send me, you know, this much money in PayPal and you got these cards. And he's always so great. I mean, that is, do you at least enjoy that a little bit? JT, spending other people's money? I mean, truth be told.
Yeah, I get a little bit of satisfaction every time I see Mike Moynihan has sent you XUSD on my PayPal account. So I do get the joy of that every single time.
Josh, what's your favorite show?
In Ohio, JT?
Yeah, it's by like Dayton, I would say. It's not too close, but it's
your
probably,
way. Okay. That's a little
yeah,
bit.
you're gonna have to go down the back roads to get there.
Right.
I mean,
Josh,
I got to go with the Dallas show too. Julie's Home Cooking's in your place, obviously Norman. I do want to check out the there's a Del Mar show, which is in also California near San Diego. Great surf spot. And then if Andy and Mike get hooked on California, you want to come back for the In-N-Out Burger, the Kardashians, the whole California lifestyle, we might have to go to that in the future too.
I'm down for the surfing and the Kardashians.
You might come back a changed man. If we see Andy's next video and he's all California'd out, we'll know why.
Yeah, it could happen. You never know.
His hair is dyed blonde, and you know he's
tight cheeks.
It looks like food.
It's like foo. Exactly.
Calling everybody bro.
Or be
Don,
80s
what about you?
California like Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. My list is pretty short since I've really only been to 3, the National, the Pittsburgh show, and Strongsville. And Pittsburgh and Strongsville do get a lot of the same dealers because it's only 2 hours apart away from each other. But I would have to say the Strongsville show, just from what I said earlier. The vintage, it's everywhere. And like I said, it's not huge, but I agree with John. It's probably more than it was at the Pittsburgh show, even though the Pittsburgh show is physically larger. But there was a lot of memorabilia and modern mixed in. So, and I'm fortunate here. I got a couple guys in Pittsburgh. Bob Lewis and Dean, and Scott lives really close to Strongsville, so he's always at that show. So that makes it fun too, as you guys all know. Especially you, Mike. With everyone coming down to Dallas for you, it's I doubt I would go to those shows by myself, to be honest.
Yeah, isn't that an interesting dynamic? Which is so like the last Dallas show I didn't go to because I didn't really have anybody coming in. The one before that, Dave Blue Jacket flew down. Josh has flown over once or twice. Josh, I can't remember, just once maybe. Twice. JT's been down here multiple times. Andy, I see him every time. John's been here. So what are the rest of you guys waiting on? Craig sets up at the Dallas show. About every third one or so, Craig. Is that about right? Feels like. Yeah. And but you're right, Don. That ability to, I'm going to go hang with Andy this weekend, or even if you're sick and sleeping under their table, like I did at Andy's.
Right.
That was weird. But...
It was weird. George, what about you? Oh, go ahead, Don, if you want to say something else.
I was just going to ask how many YouTubers have stayed at your house. Do you have a count?
I think I'm closing in on 30.
I think I told you this before, that you need to, when the new Hall of Famers go to the Hall of Fame and they sign that wall, you need some kind of YouTube wall of everyone that stayed at your house.
That's Julie's over here laughing. She's like,
like the living room or the kitchen or your master bedroom, maybe.
She would love that. Would love that. George, what about you?
Oh man, I think that probably. We don't have a lot of access to shows here in Phoenix, and I got to go to California. Vegas isn't too far, but just like John said, I had not heard great things about Vegas as a show, just because there's so many distractions. But anyway, there's a card show here in the fall and the spring called the Arizona State Card Show, and the spring is the best time because there's a lot of dealers, 250 tables, which is pretty big for here. And then we have spring training going on right then. So, you've got so many teams training within like a 40-mile radius. So you can go to, see the Dodgers. You could go to 3 games in one day if you wanted, if you found, or maybe at least 2 games. But so that's a good time of year because it's in March and the weather is nice. It's not 150 degrees yet. And then, you have got a lot of cards at these different shows, wide variety. I do need to come out to see you to go to the Dallas Card Show because that seems to be the one everybody's talking about. And for me, it's relatively, it's 1,000 miles, but it's a 2-hour plane flight.
Hey,
so.
George, I got another incentive for you.
I'll make dinner.
That's a good incentive, George.
I know. That's what I've heard.
Chris, what about you? And I'm going to do Craig last because his show experience is probably greater than all of ours combined. But Chris, what about you?
Well, I don't live in the middle of nowhere, but I can see it from my house. And so they have a fairly good sized show in Kansas City. That's about 250 tables now. And I went to that a couple times last year, but they're having some trouble there. Booking their dates. They're fighting each other for shows. There's 2 or 3 shows going on the same day, and that's not working out. But there's an older show in St. Louis that's been going on, and it's a lot of vintage stuff and and there's 250 tables, and it's called the Machinist Hall Show. But my favorite show that I go to is a small one in Columbia. It's 100 tables. The guy that runs it does a really good job. He treats you right. And there's some guys that's been going to the National since mid-90s, setting up at the National that actually come here. Actually, there's 3 vintage dealers. And I love to go the night before because I set up sometimes there. And I love to go the night before and look at their stuff and just listen to them talk because they're a wealth of knowledge, you know, and that's my favorite show. I mean, it's the best one I go to.
Cool. John, I know you've been to a ton because you travel so much. You get to go all over. I'm very envious of that. What are some of your go-to spots?
Well, I get to go to a lot of places, but mostly I leave disappointed at card shops, right? Or at least modern card shops. The Phillies show will always be my number one, and that kind of shaped the way I collected. I don't pay the local tax, the local team tax, so I don't collect a lot of Phillies because everything's jacked up. I don't know whether you guys find that everywhere else, but that kind of impacted my collecting. So I don't really collect Phillies, even though that's my team. I'm a Yaz collector. Yaz is expensive everywhere. I don't care where you go, but one show that we didn't mention that I'm probably 2.5 hours away from is Chantilly. That's another one I want to get to because it's an easy drive. So probably Chantilly and Strongsville are on my list. Dallas I've been to a couple times. It's great, but you got to wade through a lot of shiny stuff before you get to the good stuff. So I would say Chantilly or Strongsville is where I'd like to go next.
I went to Chantilly last October. I think a lot of you guys saw me talk about that, and it was about what I expected. A lot of people just rave about the show, and honestly, it was good, but I don't know that it was. I'm trying to be as honest as I can. Like if you can go to the Chantilly show, you should go. But Dallas is just so much bigger, and I think there's as much vintage in Dallas as there is in Chantilly. Chantilly's just so much smaller in terms of number of tables.
But would you prefer that though? Wouldn't you? Like Philly's a smaller show too in comparison, but if it's more focused in on what I want, then it's perfect as opposed to having to skip every 4 tables to get to the one you want to, right?
Great point. That's a good point. Craig, what's your favorite show to set up at?
Of course, besides the National, I'd say probably that Nashville show. And I think he's pushing, I think he's got over 600 tables he's going to have in March. So it's a big one. And that the last show I did there in the fall in Nashville was a good buying. I mean, I had a lot of people that brought me collections and were selling cards. So it was a good buying show for me. And, there's a lot of collectors in that area too. So that was a good show. And then I do that Midwest Monster show. So Indianapolis, for me, where I'm at in Southern Illinois, either to Nashville or to Indy is about a 3-hour drive either way. And the Midwest Monster, I think, is in June. It's a pretty good size show also. I think it's 400 or 500 tables. So in those 2 shows, I've got a pretty good following in both cities because I've done shows there for several years. So and of course, since the Nationals in Chicago this year, one thing I heard when I've done the last, several in Chicago, since I'm from Illinois, a lot of collectors will come and they'll look for a dealer that they'll go down the list and they'll see somebody from Illinois and they'll come by and see me. So that helps a little bit there, but I'd say probably the Nashville show. I'm looking forward to that one in March. Spring training time and the excitement's getting fired up for baseball. So I'm hoping that's going to be a good one, but I need to venture out. You guys are talking about some of these shows you're going out to California, and I need to just hop on a plane and go to some of these shows myself, just maybe as a collector to go check some shows out. So I'd like to do that.
It is cool that pretty much any area of the country you can find a really good show. Mm-hmm. It's not, there's these desert areas where you can't go to a show and experience that. It's pretty great that there are these shows all over now and they're all growing. Shows aren't dying, no matter what anybody else says out there.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere. Will there be as many of them? Maybe not, but there's nothing like buying an awesome vintage card at a show. And that's not true. There is one thing better, buying an awesome vintage card at a show with your buddy to show it to him and share it with him and talk about it and
Yeah.
have you talk you out of it if you need it. If you ever need that, Andrew Nuff Said Cards, the Card Whisperer, always call him if you need advice on a card. But as we finish up here, guys, I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. And,
Congratulations.
thank you. All of you have been on different episodes. Thank you, Josh. It's, this hobby isn't anywhere close to as special to me without you guys and so many others out there. Even the random person that sends me a message and says, thanks for your podcast. It really means a lot to me. I get a lot out of it. I've learned so much. When people say they've learned something, that's like the best compliment somebody can give me, because it means we're providing information that people are hungry for. And you guys are a big part of that, because I certainly don't know everything, and neither do any of you guys individually, but collectively together as a group, we have this amazing amount of knowledge, and that y'all are willing to share that is special, that y'all are willing to talk about your experiences, good and bad. All of us have gotten burned every once in a while, and to own that and just admit it and deal with it is awesome. So I just want to tell you guys how special you guys are to me, all the other guests I've had that couldn't be here tonight, and to all you listeners and watchers out there for, fueling the fire here. So last word for everybody. We'll start with John at the bottom.
Congrats. And you're just getting started. There's so much to talk about in our end of the pool. So keep going. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Chris.
Again, congratulations. And I really appreciate you having me on here. But keep remembering what you're doing is good. What you did was you got a 55-year-old guy from middle of nowhere to be able to share his collection with people. And I think just keep up the good work, man.
You bet. Giorgio.
Well, congratulations, obviously, and thanks for bringing this group together. And I remember when you first came out with the idea for the Golden Age of Cardboard, I said, man, that's a great idea. Really. Like, I wish I could, maybe someday I'll be on that show or whatever. I'd love to be on that show. And it's like, and now here we all are. But I can remember watching YouTube like 6 years ago and seeing sports card videos. But there was kind of an end to it. There was an end point where I was like, I wish they had a video about the 47 and 66 exhibits. I wish somebody did a video about this or that. And now with this, and in large part, Mike, due to you and your efforts and Andy's efforts and all your guys' efforts, like this is growing. And now you can find all these different videos about, if I want to know about Kellogg's or Hostess or, crazy stuff, I mean, or more oddball stuff than that, I can find that. I can find, Hires root beer video with a tab, without the tab, so this kind of thing is just amazing. And now there is no end to these videos. And there's so many content creators. So Mike, I think you're a big part of that, as well as all you guys on this. So thank you guys all so much.
Well, shameless plug. John and I did on his show a couple of weeks ago. We did this 1970 Kellogg set.
Yeah.
We talked through that, and because it's one of my favorite quirky sets from the 70s, and John's show does a great job going through a lot of that stuff. Josh, last word from you, sir.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what George said. There's just to compare where we are to maybe 5-6 years ago, it's come so far. Obviously, congrats on 100. I would like to propose that when you hit 1,000, we do that episode from the house in Atlantic City and get this.
Yeah. It won't be standing, man.
I'm out, Josh.
Andy's out.
Pray for a hurricane.
Greg, what about you? Last word.
Yeah, congrats, Mike. I mean, I think about the shows that I've done and how many people that I've met that have heard you on your podcast and how you've influenced their collecting. You gave me those cards that I was handing out of you, and everybody was excited. I mean, it really you've created a lot of excitement in the hobby. And I get to see that firsthand a lot of these shows, because doing a few of the podcasts, I've had so many people come and talk to me and talk about the podcasts and how much they enjoy it. So you're really touching a lot of people, and it's a great thing. And appreciate everything that you're doing. I know it has to take a lot of time. And like Josh said, I mean, I look forward to 1,000 episodes, sky's the limit, because it's creating a lot of excitement and people are really, really enjoying it. So you're doing a great job on it.
Well, I am glad I live in Texas, because down here you're allowed to touch people. So it's okay. Not illegal. Don, what about you?
Yeah, Mike, obviously, congrats, brother. It's quite an achievement. And I remember the first time you asked me to be on, I was literally leaving Chicago, Nashville, where I just briefly met you and for the first time, and remembering how excited I was. And I've been on 6 times now, and 5 of those times it's been with George that I've been on. So we're kind of a team. But what I love about this, and I think our community and the channels I watch, is it's fun. There's no drama on here. No one cares about all the other garbage that's out there. We just come on here and talk about cars and have a good time. And I met Chris because of your show. I went to Craig's booth because I saw him on your show at the National. So it's just you're just spreading the word, and congratulations, man.
Thanks. JT, oh, my son.
Dad, I'm proud of you. In all seriousness, congratulations on 100 episodes. It's one thing to think of an idea, such as thinking up the golden age of cardboard, and I think it takes an entirely different level to execute it and then execute it over the course of 100 episodes. And I'm pretty sure I've listened to about all of them, if not all of them, and they've never felt forced. It always felt like it was something to talk to. It wasn't put out for the sake of putting out an episode. It's always learned something from it. So I hope everyone out there feels the same way, but we've got something special going. Congrats, my friend.
Thanks. And that's it. That's all. I'm just kidding. Andy.
So everybody's stroked your ego enough. So I'll just give you one piece of final advice, and hopefully,
Andy, I'm trying to watch the game behind you. Could you be a little
you move over a little?
Hopefully you'll take this piece of advice going forward, and that is keep collecting.
Keep collecting. That's right. I wish I had a way to do some kind of choreographed thing where we all look down at each other and left and right, and like some type of Brady Bunch thing. But what are you going to do? There you go. We can all wave bye. Wait, there is nobody on that side. Andy's over here. I'll just. Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. You guys all made 100 possible because you all participated, and all of you out there made 100 possible because you participated by watching and listening. So we'll send it off for now. Be back next week with episode 101. I have no idea what it'll be, but it'll be great, and we look forward to seeing you there. Have a good night, and we can all say it. Keep collecting.
Keep collecting.